this is first, I'm Thierry Goubier. I work at CEA list. So CEA is the Atomic Energy Commission, but I don't know anything related to nuclear energy. So what I do is that I do some coding with Pharo already for a few years. And one of the things I have to do is to work within a professional sort of organization. Okay, that's a research organization, but still. And I have to work with version control systems, okay, and particularly Git. So I'm going to talk about how we can do those things with Pharo, what is available, what does it mean for companies, and well, some of those things at least open for questions, and try to show you where all those things are going and what you can base on it, especially on a professional level. Okay. So the first question I'll ask is, have you used Monticello? Yeah. I should ask, has anybody doesn't know what Monticello is? No? So, what about Metacello? Oh, not everybody. Okay. I thought I could jump around on the first 7 slides, so maybe I'll have to go straight. So, what the things do is allow us to do packages. I have a lot about it. Packages, grouping packages together, loading them as a set, okay, following versions and all these things. So I just go through that if you have more questions about Monticello, but that's, I think some of you even know more than me about it. Okay, merges, branches, configuration with Metacello, loading configuration versions, scripting, remote repositories, hosting. Okay, so I've done everything. Okay, so we'll come back if you have more questions about that, then it's open for discussion. And my interest is that when you go to companies and you want to work with Pharo, then it means you have to integrate with the company culture about that. Okay, and if they already have source code management in place, then it means you can't change it. Okay, you have to do with what they have. Okay, so they have coding development rules, they have a certain culture around that, they have quality process that goes into their code management and all. And the question is, of course, that Pharo cannot do that. But we have to look at what we need, what we're looking at in the process, what are its functionalities and all, and the processes we use with it. And the big question, of course, is we base everything in Pharo around Monticello, and is it up to the task? Okay, so for me, that's what you see in professional source code management is you work with branches. Okay. Basically, you can't work without that. There's a lot about control. Okay, it can be a fairly strict process where only one person is in charge and has the authority for doing a release or integrating something in the master branch. We're not in an open source project where that's fairly open. No, you have hierarchical management, you have responsibilities, and you can't do and play with the repository and have shared responsibility. Usually that doesn't work. Okay? And you have strict processes going on, often organizational, about how you integrate things for release. Okay? What are the steps? Who has to validate them and all? Okay? We're speaking of big companies. I know maybe small ones. Synectic, for example, you can come in and redefine the process. Okay, or I don't think there's even a process. There is, sort of. You mean to sign off all the release?
Well, it's fun to keep on all tests green. I mean,
Yeah, okay. At least this one.
there is a process.
There is a process. At least that's quality change. So what we see is that we have branches, we have basically release, bug fixes on release, stuff that has only been delivered to customers. We have development branches, we have phaser branches, we have, okay, it's more or less flexible depending on where you work. And you have lots of tagging going on. That means you set release points, you have snapshots, you have baseline, you have all sort of process, and you end up with things that look like that. Okay? You see I'm even here. No, I didn't do much. No? Well, that's an example. It's Dale, the guy behind Metacelo and a few other things. And this is his release process for file tree. So you see there's a master and there's a lot of branches for all the different versions that are supported. You see it's even still doing those. Okay, Pharo 1, Pharo 1.1, 1.3, 1.4, and so on. Okay? And after that you have control, integration, reviews, all these things linked to the company. So how do we fit Pharo there? All the revision control systems are basically text-oriented. There are very few that are object. So they consider that as source code is text file. So the first thing we do is we use something in Pharo that's called file tree, which maps a Monticello package on text files. Okay? And maps everything. Methods, class definition, class comments, extensions, version history, everything goes on text files. Okay? We have it on Pharo starting version 3, it's integrated. Before that you had to have it. Okay? And it's integrated in Monticello, Metacelo, so it becomes one part of the system. It's one kind of repository. How many of you have worked with that already? Yeah, quite a lot. So, the second thing you have with this integration is that when you merge, you don't merge anymore with Pharo or Monticello. That doesn't work because that doesn't register in the RCS as a merge. And the RCS, you're supposed to track everything you do, the merge, and how you bring in things in. So you need to do the merge in the RCS, not in Monticello, for it to track. Okay? And of course, then you happily discover that Smalltalk code and the metadata, especially what we call the version history, doesn't work very well. Really, well, it even doesn't work. So we have merge conflicts on that one. And you do everything on the revision control system outside Pharo. Okay? So you do your development, you save your packages, then you drop to another tool or to the command line, and then you do your commit, and then you do all the stuff you have to do with the ICS. Okay? So I'll give you an example with Git. So we start, we have Pharo, file tree. One package is one directory in the Git. Okay? We can have multiple packages inside one repository in one directory in the Git. We can have multiple file tree repository inside the same Git repository. Okay? And we go to the command line and we do git clone, git commit, git checkout, git branch, git push, git pull, git merge. And I'm sure there's those. I don't do rebase. Okay? This one I really know. Okay? I never rewrite history.
Reset.
What? Reset to head. Yeah. This one also. Okay? Or you choose a GUI. But that GUI, that means it's outside Pharo. Mel, Git, G, Git car, and there's a lot of them. Okay? Git is so complex that you want a GUI to help you, but you also want the command line because there's really some stuff that no GUI can handle for you. Okay? You can combine with makefiles. This is the way I work. Okay? So I have makefiles, I load things from the Git, and the makefiles are in the version control. Okay, so they link to it, but I try not to have images inside the Git. It doesn't scale very well. Okay? And it fits within any workflow with Git. Okay? It's going to work whatever your organization, your company is doing with Git. Okay? Because you're doing things outside. Okay? So you keep working in the same way, and you use Pharo. There's two issues in that it's very easy to desynchronize between Monticello and the repository. So the things you have in your image have an history, half a dozen versions, and then in the Git you only have one. Okay, not interesting. Okay, and the second one is that you'll have to do merge. Okay, you can't use Git without having to do merge one day. You can try to postpone that, but you have to do it. And you see appearing conflicts with the version, especially the version history of your Monticello packages. And those conflicts are really a pain to solve. Okay? And you even see repository, you have Git repository with Monticello packages where you have incorrect version data with still the conflict in them. Okay? That's so what you look is one of the things you add to the integration then is the branches. Okay, so you see when you go into branches in Git, you see only what is related to that branch. Okay, and especially you see only the head. So you don't see any other changes coming on the other branches. The main difference with the Monticello way of working. Okay, if someone else works on a further branch, okay, you won't see his work until he merges back to the branch you're working on. Okay, so for example, if Rasa was on Git, when Sven was doing some experimental stuff with Rasa, okay, someone on the master branch wouldn't have seen it. Okay? No additional versions coming up and popping up in the system. Okay? Until he merges. So what happened is that one of the concepts that is in Monticello, Metacello is a baseline concept. Okay? Which is something very simple. When you have a project, you say, the current configuration of the project is the top of the branch. Okay? It's the latest version of all the packages on this branch. And of course you have plenty of branches. Okay? So you just list the package in the baseline, you store baseline as a file tree inside that branch, and then you use Metacello. And you just say, baseline, you give the repository and you say load. Okay, my configuration is done.
But Thierry, I imagine you can also, in the baseline, you can also refer to it from a project or things like that. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
you can. And that means this code will work on any of the branches where you have the baseline. Okay? So no need to try to write your different versions inside the configuration and remember which package version this project version goes to, and so on and so on. For something like C-side, it's long to use, or you need to use version and specific tools. Yeah, you can, but you could add multiple baselines. That also could work. Or groups in baseline that works also. Okay? So Metacello added something else. Okay, this is part of the ongoing development of Metacello, is to have specific repositories supported in Metacello. And then you can target a branch, a tag. This is where you set a version or release or these sort of things. And you work with GitHub or Bitbucket. And then you just say, okay, metacell new, baseline SMRCC, that's an example, repository, you use a GitHub URL, and you say, the version you want. Okay? Behind that, it's going to load around 10 to 12 packages. Okay? And I didn't do anything more for that than having a baseline in my master and doing a release on GitHub and say, okay, it's now version 2.04. Okay? Just point to the right branch. You can also add branch. The version tag, load the baseline, done. Okay? And so in PharoDAYS currently adding qualifiers that says that you can track a set of release. Okay? So for example, v2.0.star will track 2.0.4, 2.0.5, 2.0, etc. You have a specific qualifier that takes, you say you use it, and then it's going to also track 2.0.4.1, 2.0.4.2, and so on. So if you're good at maintaining a stable API and only bug fixes on a version, then it's very easy to say, you qualify that, you take any 2.0 version that works. Okay, or take the latest. So it's becoming easy. So the next step, and it's the one I use, okay, is to add something called git file tree. And it's basically to do automatically some of the git commands, simple ones, okay, to work with the git behind. So what it does is clone, push, pull, commit, checkout. So people working with git know a bit about those. They're basically the base tools of the work. Okay, you clone a repository, you push to the distant repository when you have changes, you pull, you commit. Okay, one of the things is it's to avoid desynchronization, so that what I do in the image is well the same that is in the git. Okay, when I save the package, I commit the package. Okay, if you work that way, that works. And the second idea is to extract git versioning info so that you get it back into Pharo and you can explore all the history of your git. Okay, basically you don't work anymore with the changes. When you work like that, what you do is you look and you see your git has happily, in that particular case, 300 versions of the packages, and you can make history and diff between any of those. Okay, so we know how to do that. We also there's also ideas about using the git as a change set. So you can ask any versions of a method, for example, any versions of a class definition. We can do this sort of things by querying the repository. And then the last one, and that's probably the most significant, is something called a merge driver. Okay? All version control systems try to guess what they should do with specific files when you merge. Okay? And they know how to merge text files, but they don't know how to merge binary files, okay, and various other. So what I did is write a small driver. It's not much in code, and it takes the metadata in Monticello, the one that's creating conflicts, okay, and it just knows how to merge them correctly. And it sits inside the Git configuration, so that when you do a Git merge, then Git will look, oh, okay, it's a metadata file. Then I'll ask the merge driver to do the merge for me. Okay, and it's going to merge versions, it's going to merge the properties, it's going to merge all the mess. And then I even had a complaint from Dave because he was also correctly merging class definitions. in one branch you add an instance variable, another branch you add another instance variable, and then you are merging that, and they wrote to me and said, "What? I want a conflict when I see that." Okay, and he was merging it. Okay, it's a command line tool written in Pharo. So this was a bit funny. It's a nice use of command line, the command line handler, and it's also used in non-Pharo projects. Okay, which is a bit funny. Installing it is a bit okay. That works, but maybe there's something to be done by that. Okay, but that's the set of tools. Once you have all of them, you have a fairly nice workflow that's convenient and fairly flexible depending on how you work with Git. Okay, for some people it's a bit the Git file tree part is a bit too invasive because it does command systematically. Okay, you commit, it's going to save the version and commit for you, and maybe you don't want that. Okay, but what it says is that Pharo plus file tree plus branches plus blasting plus metaselo plus a few other things, it's going to work for X, your version control system, where X is going to be SVN, Mercurial, Bazaar, CVS, KKs. I don't know much about the one that you pay a lot of money to use and these other things. I know only of one. Okay, but that means we have that. The Git integration is a good template to see how we integrate external revision control system commands inside Pharo, and how we extract history version information from the RCS inside Pharo, so that you get the benefit of using it. Okay, and from that base, we can reuse and say, basically, if you have a command line tool, you use OS process as Git file tree is doing, and you probably need 1 to 2 man scope to adapt to a completely new RCS and have something working well. Okay, so I think you have a Pharo consortium where you can ask for or fund that kind of development if you want to have it. And I'm sure that in terms of the context of working inside an organization with a specific RCS, then that's the way to do it. Okay, or you can do it yourself if you plan to. It's not that complicated. Okay, because there's really not that much. I think I even know someone is apparently trying to rewrite Git file tree properly, but he didn't tell me, so I don't know much about it. Okay, and the last point I wanted to make is that it's not the same issue as moving Pharo development to Git on GitHub. Okay, when you work in a company where you have to adapt to an existing development process, you're not in the same situation than deciding for yourself what you want to do with Git. Okay? That's the point. So thank you very much. Any question?
Here's one. Down there.
Just that moment. Actually, every multi-channel command or multi-channel file is separate branch. From that perspective, there is branch support in terms and multi-channel.
Let me come back to the multi-channel part. Yeah. But try to find the branches in the RASAL repository, for example.
And that tools question, right?
Not entirely, because when you work with branches, you really like not to see the other branches and have your view polluted by all the different versions on the other branches. Okay? You like your enter, you go into your branch, table set. If I look the documentation on the side, all the packages and so on, I know it's linked to my branch. In Monticello, you get all of them at the same time. I know Monticello supports that. And also, not apparent in the package name. Sometimes you're lucky, someone like Sven is very nice, and write experimental branch in the comment linked to his version. Okay? But not everybody does that. If you name it in the package name, it's a trick. It's only in the file name, it doesn't go into the version information. And when you have multiple branches, especially on something like Git, Monticello will have a tendency to give the same version numbers on two different branches, and then will mess up everything loading in the cache. Guaranteed. Okay, so there's something to maybe look into that. But I know that Monticello does the merging between branches perfectly fine.
I have a question about the last remark. So you said it's not the same as if we would choose ourselves how to use Git. So can you expand a little bit on what is your opinion if we should choose to do that? Would you do it in the same way, or what would you do different, or what is your...
Well, what I wanted to say is that I think Git is a good tool, but it's not the only one. Okay? To do development of things like Pharo. It would be fairly nice, and I think in many projects, I'm thinking of Rasa, probably Moose as well, all those large projects, to have well-set branches, to know what is related to different versions, and the same goes for Pharo. But it's not specific to Git. The thing is that Git is a support and a flow. Okay? And you choose the flow you use with it. How you deal with branches. How you do. There's a few documents, but they're only guides. Okay? So the last point is that in a company, there's a pre-existing flow. So you have to work with it. In Pharo, as goes the development of Pharo itself, then it's for the Pharo community to choose the flow you want to use. Okay? And that means you look at tools in a different way. Because you don't have the constraint of the industrial guy like me who has to deal with I don't know how many other people using other languages in the same repository. Okay, so any idea that says, for example, that I'm going to load directly the repository inside the Pharo memory and play with it and do the merge myself, that won't work. Okay, and that's the situation of people bringing Pharo in the company. Okay, decisions are different. And we can't spend months trying to have that support. Okay, 1-2 months I say, it's already a lot. To ask a manager, give me 1 or 2 months time just to get the things to run. Okay? And it's really short. You can't spend time trying to get the best and the perfect integration and these other things. Different decision. You don't have the same constraints.
With the merge driver, very nice.
Yeah.
Here I look at my Git display because I use this and file tree, not Git file tree. It's just things like.
Yeah, I know. And understand, there's a flow.
But for example, you do a C-side application and you commit your power JSON because you need some component, and then you fix some small code methods. It's all in one commit. So it's not a piece in JavaScript there and a piece of small code there, and you don't have to import all your JavaScript into a file library to keep everything small code, because that's a pain. And you can have your Jenkins taking the Git changes and being triggered by that. It's so nice. But we keep Monticello packages somewhere, at time we just ship it to FTP server or something, just in case.
Just in case. The merge driver is working nicely.
But when you say with file tree, anyway, in your package cache, you end up with the MCZ of the packages you commit through your flows.
Yeah. I think the merge driver was the most significant thing, and it's really a small piece of code. I think it's 150 lines only.
Yeah.
It's really not much.
I want to add that
say there is no conflict.
What?
Mostly to say there is no conflict.
Yeah, but you've not seen the file tree repository on GitHub. And when I was starting with Git file tree, I was trying to scan all versions in there to